Is it unmuted back there?
No, that's good.
There we go.
Yep.
I can't tell a difference, but. How many of you would say you know who Jesus is? You know who Jesus is. You know who God is. You say, man, I know who God is. And that's why I came to church this morning. I want to know. You know, throughout history, many people have claimed to know who God is. Many people claim to say they know what he would do or what he wouldn't do. And so we've been going through a series where Jesus tells us who he is. It's called I Am, because there's 7 times in the Bible where Jesus says, I am, and he fills in who he is. And the reason we're doing this is because many times we come in with all kinds of assumptions. Maybe you don't even know it. It was things that you'd been taught. Your parents said about God. Maybe a religious place you went told you about God. Things you assumed about God. And what is scary about that is what if you're wrong? Jesus came down here on earth. Jesus, the guy who claimed to be the Son of God, and the very religious people who were waiting for him didn't recognize him. How about you and I? If we spend some time with Jesus, would we know who he is? Or would he not fit our box? That's why we're going through this series. We're looking at who does Jesus say he actually is? Because that's what I really want to know. I really want to know who Jesus says he is. And it may not line up with what I think, but that's the most important thing, to know who really is God. I was reading a story this week about an earthquake that happened about 30 years ago in Armenia. It was a devastating earthquake. Around 30,000 people died. The whole city, in one of these cities where the main epicenter, it leveled it. We got a picture here of no picture. She's shaking her head at me. Nothing? Nothing? Looks like an earthquake? Do we have any slides? Oh, okay. Like, oh, that's not a good sign if the first slide's not there. So there was this horrible earthquake, leveled the ground. Literally, it was just rubble. And so imagine you are a parent that morning took your kids to school, dropped them off, and went to work. And this earthquake happens. And you immediately drop everything. You run to the school, and you find the school flat, leveled. What would you do? Well, this one father, he was so distraught. He goes to the place where he thinks the classroom was, and he just starts pulling rocks out, digging through the rubble. I mean, it's a mound of rubble, right? A whole building collapsed. And he's doing that for an hour and a half, until eventually some other parents are like trying to stop him. They're like, man, just there's no point. Like, just stop, because it sucks, but there is nobody could have survived this, right? Like, we just need to process it. And he says, no, I'm going to keep going. I told my son I would always be there for him no matter what. I'm going to keep trying to find him. And he keeps just digging through the rubble. After about 5 hours, the firefighters and the police even try to stop him. They're like, man, there is no hope here. We're the experts. We know there's no hope. And he says, no, I'm going to keep searching. He refuses. And he's just like, and they're just like, okay, this dude just like lost it, right? And he's just going to keep looking and looking. So he keeps digging 12 hours. 24 hours later, he's still digging, moving stuff. 36 hours, he's digging. And then he hears a voice. His son yelling, Dad, Dad. And what happens, the building collapsed, it had made this little pocket, and his son and his whole class were down there. And they would probably never found him probably not for like weeks or longer, until they had worked on cleaning that rubble. And they also, when they heard that voice, everybody came and they rescued, and this whole class was safe. And his son said, I kept telling my class, my dad promised he will always be there for me. And he's coming for us. And I was reading that story this week because I think so many of us long for a relationship like that. Someone that will be there no matter what. When everything has fallen apart in our lives, someone who will love us even when we're at our worst, when we're at our lowest moments, when it looks like there's no way out. And many times I think of myself, and I'm sure like you, we ask this question when we're at our lowest. We say, God, are you coming through? God, where are you right now? So this morning I want to ask this question. Is God someone we can rely on? Not just what we as the church say, oh yeah, God, he loves you, right? What does Jesus say about this question? Is God someone you can rely on? You see, during the Bible time, when the Bible was written, it was written in a context, a very specific context in the Middle East, where sheep were a normal part of everyday life. Do we have a sheep? Oh, there we go. We do have this picture. Right? Everywhere you look, this is the face you saw. Whenever, like in the time of the Bible, okay? And sheep were popular because it was something that someone could afford as an easy way to take care of their family, right? It was something that they could make clothes off of, that they could have food, that, as we talked about last week, religious sacrifices. It was a way to get closer with God. And so sheep were a very integral part of the community. And so everyone would have known everything about sheep. It was a normal part of the everyday life. It's similar to cars for you and me. You may not even own a car, but you for sure can recognize one, right? You know a little bit about cars probably. You may know how to drive one, even if you don't have a license. You're like, oh, I could probably do it. I mean, that's the same. Even if they didn't own a sheep, they would have known so much about sheep. And so Jesus, this man with supernatural abilities, a man who was claiming, I'm the Son of God, a great teacher who would help people understand God, he comes and his teaching is so different than all the religious people. The religious people would talk sometimes in riddles and like it could be this and it could be that. And they said Jesus was so different. Not only did he talk as if he actually knew God, but he made God accessible. He would talk in stories, things that the average everyday person could understand, parables about life. And people could actually connect with it, and it wasn't this high up there, like, oh man, I can't understand what they're talking about, but it sounds really good. No, this is something that they could actually understand. And so because of that, what do you think Jesus talked about a lot? Sheep. Don't take that down. I need that picture. This was what he would talk about a lot because they were very familiar with it. And that was the normal person, the everyday person talked about. The religious people, all they knew about was like killing sheep, right? But Jesus knew a lot about actually taking care of sheep. And so Jesus, he talks about sheep a lot. And now, you and I have not learned a lot about sheep. I think last week we had like one or two people that knew something about sheep. Has anybody here ever raised sheep? You've raised them? No, okay. You know about sheep. You've studied them. You had sheep. Oh, you did. Okay. So Inyasa has had some sheep, so he knows a little bit. I know a little bit just from Google. I've never personally raised a sheep. I think I petted one once at a petting zoo. But sheep, a lot of people think sheep are dumb, but they're not actually dumb. They're actually very intelligent. They're just not wise. Some of you know that intelligence and wisdom is not the same thing. Sometimes, just like us, you can be so smart that you get yourself into a lot of trouble. And that's what sheep do. They're very smart. They can actually realize, hey, this fence that's supposed to keep us in this space, and there's food and water in here, and we're protected, but I want to check out what's over there. And I think I'm smart enough to be able to jump this. So 3 foot wasn't enough, so they started raising the fences to 4 feet. They were still jumping over them. 5 feet. The sheep are jumping over these fences. That's like jumping over top of Anna, right? Like, you're like, man, yeah, I can't jump over Anna, but the sheep are like, we will jump out. And so they would get themselves into trouble, right? Or a sheep realized that if it could fit its head through the crack, it could get its body through eventually by wiggling. So they say the sheep, as long as the crack is about 8 inches wide, a sheep can wriggle its way through. So if you're like thinking, oh, this fence, nothing's going to happen. The sheep would figure out that they could get through it. The other thing that was crazy is nowadays they have this thing that's like for all animals, so they can't go in and out. So you don't have to have a gate. What they do is they put a pit and put bars across it, right? So if you drive across it, your tires, you'll just go over it. But if a sheep or a cow or something steps on it, their feet fall through. So they can't walk across it. It's like rounded bars. Does that make sense? Yeah. But the sheep figured out they could roll over it. Literally, the sheep figured this out. You can see videos of them. They're rolling over the bars. They know how, oh, we can get out of this. So again, sheep are pretty intelligent, but why are they escaping? They're running from where everything is safe, right? They're running out to where there's wolves. They're running out to where the lions are. They're running out to where there's no food or no water, right? They are not doing something for their betterment, but they think they're so clever. Despite the owner's best efforts, most of the time the sheep end up doing something so dumb it puts their own lives in danger. So, who is there to look out for the sheep? A shepherd. A shepherd is someone that if you had enough money, you would hire to look after the sheep. They would be with the sheep 24/7. This was a very intense job. You'd be there all the time, and your job was to help take care of them. If you didn't have a lot of money, it was your job or your kid's job, right? And usually the youngest kid. You think of King David. He was actually the shepherd because he was the youngest kid, had the least amount of respect in his family. They're like, you're going to go out and live in the field. So that was where King David was. But their job was to make sure that the sheep didn't harm themselves because they were, as we said, very clever and would usually get themselves into so much trouble. They were there to make sure they were fed. If they got sick or broke their leg, they would make sure they helped them heal. So a shepherd was someone that was supposed to make sure, despite the sheep's best efforts to do otherwise, that they were going towards health, towards safety, towards long life, right? So the sheep, even though they're bound and determined to do everything wrong, the shepherd was there to try to guide them back. Even though there was enemies out there trying to steal the sheep, we talked about that last week, people who would come in and steal the sheep, or wolves, lions, bears who would come in and try to kill the sheep, the shepherd was there to protect them. It was like a pretty serious job. I don't know about you, but that's not my average everyday thing, is fighting off wild animals. So does it really surprise you that Jesus talks so much about sheep? Because when I hear about sheep, all I can think of is you and me. Whenever Jesus talked about you and me, he usually referred to us as sheep. We would do everything we can to get in trouble. We are so clever. We think we outsmarted God. We're like, oh, I know how to do this better than you, God. We know how to run relationships. We know how to run our finances. We know how to take care of our families better. We're constantly hurting ourselves in avoidable ways. That's what I think of. When I look around at my life, at our lives, we're always doing things that, man, if we would have just listened, we could have avoided that. And then God comes in and he rescues you. And what do you do again next week? Not just something bad. You do the exact same thing. And then he rescues you. And what do? The exact same thing, right? We're exactly like sheep. We think we're so smart. We're like, oh, I think I figured it out this time. Right? God gets you out of that horrible relationship that is like destroying you. And it blows my mind how many times, what do we do less than a month later? Back into some toxic relationship. Immediately. Right? God gets you out of the hole of the finances, and then what do? Within less than a month, I just had to open a few credit cards. Right? So many times, that's what we do as humans. We're just like sheep. And on top of that, there's all these enemies out there who are trying to destroy your life. There's a spiritual enemy that wants to destroy your life, but there are people also that want to see you fail. People who want to see you do worse than them. And if Jesus compares you and me to the sheep, the question is, who is the shepherd? Who is looking out for you? Who helps you when you're sick? Who would you rely on to protect you? Maybe you'd say, oh, my family, they got my back. Or Man, you know my boyfriend, he is working out 24/7, and he's got me. Or my husband, my wife, my mom, my dad, my kids, my coworkers, they got my back. Look with me at John 10, verse 11. Jesus tells us who he thinks the shepherd is. Verse 11. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. This is one of those 7 I am statements that Jesus tells us who he is. Remember, this is describing to us who God is from God's mouth himself. This is him telling us, this is who I am. This is my very character. And Jesus tells us who he is. And on top of that, he tells us not only is he the one who is supposed to be looking out for us, right? He says he's a shepherd, all those things we just talked about. But what is the word that he puts right before shepherd? He is a good shepherd. I am the good shepherd. When he says I'm the good shepherd, what does that imply? There are bad shepherds as well. You're right, yeah. It means he's good, but it implies that there is maybe some other shepherds that are not the good shepherds. You see, just like the time of Jesus now, there are many people tasked with doing things that are important. Many of us have responsibilities, callings on our lives, but we drop them. Things that you're supposed to do. You're supposed to take care of that family member when they're sick, but you're a little too busy. Someone was supposed to help you when you got stuck in that addiction to help guide you out, but they didn't show up. There's someone that was supposed to help lead you towards God, but they actually led you away from God. There's people who are hurting you when they were supposed to be helping. All of us, we experience this, that need at some time or the other where you need someone to guide you, someone to protect you, someone to be there for you when the enemy comes. But how many of you experienced that person not being there? Anyone? Just me? It doesn't mean that they're the worst person in the world. Maybe they were there at another time, but they let you down. Parents who are supposed to be there through the ups and the downs, but then just throw you out of the house when things get hard. Or maybe they got their own stuff going on, so they just kind of disappear for a while, come back and in and out of your life. Police officers who are always supposed to protect, but some maybe look the other way. Politicians who make so many promises, but then do the exact opposite. Teachers who are supposed to be there to help you grow, but end up helping hold you back. Friends who are supposed to have your back in every situation, but then when you get in that situation, you look behind you and no one is there. You see, you and I have been let down by people so often that many times you and I trust only one person. Who is it? Ourselves. Many times you say, man, I'm the only one I can trust. I gotta just like rely on me right now. Anybody? I definitely feel that. Man, sometimes we've been let down so many times that it feels like there is no one that we can rely on. And Jesus knows about this, these type of relationships where you thought someone would be there to help you, but they didn't end up helping. Look at the next verse. This is him talking about the opposite of the good shepherd. He says, the hired hand is not the shepherd. The bad shepherd, right? It's like he doesn't even deserve the title shepherd. And does not own the sheep. It's like the person who works for the company. They have no ownership, no investment, right? If I work for Target and someone comes in and they're going to rob Target, I'm not going to stand in the way. Right? I'm not going to die for Target, I'm not getting anything from this besides the paycheck, right? That's what he's saying. He's saying a hired hand is there for the paycheck. He doesn't own the sheep. So when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. Then the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. And the man runs away because he's a hired hand and he cares nothing for the sheep. The bad shepherds are the ones who have no ownership. When things get hard, they say, well, you're on your own. At least it's not my sheep. Or if something comes to destroy or steal, you're like, all yours. I'm not risking my life. If a lion comes in to kill those sheep, are you going to face them down? King David, he's like, gets out a sling. He's like, okay, I'm going to take off. And like, here you go, buddy. A lion, right? Some sheep, maybe if they're missing, the hired hand says, well, at least half are still here. Unfortunately, for many of us, this is all we know. And I'm not saying everyone is that extreme, but we've experienced that in our lives with so many people. Shepherds who you thought would be there, people who you thought would be there, but ended up running away at the worst moments, the moments where things were the worst for you. But let me tell you something. There is a good shepherd. Unlike all the people who have let you down, unlike all the people who are supposed to help you and maybe did sometimes, but not all the time, unlike all the people who promised you something and didn't follow through, Jesus says, I am your good shepherd. That's what he's saying. I am your good shepherd. I want you to hear that this morning. He's talking to you. I am your good shepherd. When your life is a mess and you need someone to lay it all on the line, Jesus is saying, I will be there for you. When something comes at you to mess up your life, something's coming to destroy you, a person, the enemy, Jesus says, I'm not going to leave you. I'm going to actually stand with you there. As you go through that, I will stay with you. Jesus says, when you find yourself lost and you can't find your way back, Jesus says this, I will guide you back. That's what the good shepherd is. You know what stands out from the bad shepherds to me? Look at that verse 11 again. He says, I'm the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. Here's the big difference between a good and a bad shepherd. Jesus says, I am willing to die for you. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. Jesus is saying, I will take care of you no matter the cost. No matter the cost. In a couple of weeks, we celebrate Easter. We have those little cards. Powerful way to invite someone. But the reason we celebrate is because Jesus came back to life on Easter. And through his life, we can experience spiritual life. Real life. And we celebrate it. It's a huge party. Every year. But in order for him to rise from the dead, what had to happen? He had to die. Why did he die? According to what we just read. Because he is the good shepherd who lays down his life for the sheep. You see, there's an enemy who's marked you out for destruction. There's a spiritual enemy that wants to do nothing but ruin your life. The enemy wants you to do everything possible to get you away from God. To have everything just crumble in your life. And the best part is he's so tricky. He gets you to believe it's the best thing for you until it's too late. Until you're too far down that road. And he's marked you out. He's coming at you every single day. And at the end of all of it, it's just spiritual death. And Jesus says, I will stand in your place. Jesus stands in front of you and says, I will take what you have coming. And he dies for you. Jesus stood in the way and he says, I will die for Anna. I will die for Teresa. I will die for Travis. I'll die for JJ. I'll die for Rachel, for Patrick, for Mila. Jesus thinks of you. It's not just impersonal or a big group. He knows you as his sheep. And he says, I am a good shepherd. And I'm going to stand in the way so you can have life, even if it costs me everything. I don't think any of us know anyone else like that. And I read this, and I think the enemy is this wolf who comes in to destroy. And it says he scatters and he isolates. And that's what he's seeking to do, is to isolate you, to bring you away. And Jesus is the good shepherd who works to keep you in community with God, with his church. It reminds me, as we're talking about, of King David, who the least of his family, who his father had even forgotten about him. If you read that story, it's like, do you have any other sons? He's like, oh yeah, there is this kid. What's his name again? David. Well, yeah, let's get him. Right? He was forgotten about, but he's out there giving his life for the sheep. He says he was telling the story. He's like, there was a lion who came to kill my dad's sheep, and I fought and killed the lion. There was then a bear who came, and I did the same thing. I killed the bear. No wonder so many times we say, like, David is that prototype of who Jesus was going to be. It's like, man, he's just showing us that. That is the good shepherd who will take on the craziest things for you. I am the good shepherd. I lay down my life for the sheep. The very next verse, Jesus tells us the second part of what it means to be a good shepherd. He says, I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. Just as the Father knows me and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. Again, he tells you, in case you don't believe him, he says, man, I will lay down my life for the sheep. That's what matters to me. You matter so much no matter the cost. But look at that first part. A good shepherd knows his sheep, and his sheep know him. We talked about this a little bit last week, how a shepherd will spend so much time with his sheep that they will know his voice. So they'll have these huge pens with tons of sheep from different herds in there, but then the shepherd will come and say, let's go. And they'll recognize his voice, and they'll all come and follow him. But the sheep who don't know his voice are like, I'm not going with that guy. That's a stranger danger, right? We're so smart sheep, right? But they will follow the shepherd who has been with them since they were little, who has spent so much time with them that they recognize his voice. How many of you, your child is yelling out in the hallway, you could say, like, I recognize that voice. Right? I've heard that screaming many times. Many, many times. There's a problem out there. My child's causing it. You know, we spend so much time with some people, eventually you learn to recognize voice. It's really crazy how God created us. Everyone has such a unique voice. You know, someone calls you on the phone, and you say, hey, what's going on? You're like, oh, hey, what's going on? Like, you recognize their voice immediately. Oh, Ignis, I know this is you. I don't even have to look. It's funny, I'll go and pick up Brooke from work while I walk my dogs. And she'll be like far away. So many kids yelling, playing on the playground. And Brooke will just be like, London! Like barely hear it. And London's just like, where is that? I like hear my mom, you know. My dog like knows her voice. And he doesn't care about anybody else. Everybody's like trying to pet him. He doesn't care. He's like focused on getting to her, right? And it's funny how voices can have such a powerful impact on our lives. But what does it cost in order for to know a voice? Time. You don't know someone's voice unless you spend time with them. That's what makes it unique. That's what you start to realize it stands out. Yeah, if you don't spend enough time, genetics, you say? Yeah.
Sometimes you sound like your parents.
Okay, true. Well, that's the thing, right? If you don't spend enough time, then you hear someone's parent, you're like, oh man, that sounds exactly like you. But the more time you spend with them, you're like, oh wait, you do have a unique voice too, right? You can't even tell the difference unless you spend enough time. Or like twins. You see twins and you're like, oh, they're identical. No matter what, how much time I spend with them. But then you start to spend more and more, you're like, oh, I can actually tell them apart, right? Like the triplets here. They look exactly the same. Now you spend so much time, you're like, oh, I know every single one now. This is so true of how we walk with Jesus. I think of a good shepherd is whether he knows you and you know him. The more time you spend with Jesus, the more you are able to recognize his voice. And what do I mean by time? I mean, coming on Sundays is awesome. This is important. This is what God has actually calls us to do, is to spend time together here as the full body of Christ, the church. But for you to know God's voice, you're going to have to do so much more than just come on Sundays. And it's not like we're going to have church service every day of the week either. It means you spend time with God on your own. You spend time in prayer and reading the Bible, God's holy words that speak to you. You allow God's voice to be a part of your daily life. And then, when you're torn about whether or not you should go a certain way with your life, you can actually hear God's voice. So let me tell you, it's really easy to know God's voice when everything's going real easy in your life. Your health is going good, your family's going good, your finances are going good. And you're just like, oh yeah, God is just like right there. I can hear him. We are walking hand in hand. Let me tell you, when a crisis happens, you have a health crisis, or you have a big decision to make that will affect your whole life. All of a sudden, let me tell you, there's a lot of voices. Voices just like that big herd of sheep. There's all these shepherds around the outside. They're saying, this way, let's go this way. Come on, let's go this way. And you're just like, Because the enemy knows that he can trick you to go in this way. He doesn't know God's voice. I can sound like God. This is the best for you, Anna. This way. You're like, oh, yeah, I think so. Or he uses people in your life. Hey, like, Anna, I think actually you should go this way with your life. And there's voices yelling all around. Everyone's telling you go this way, go this way, go this way, go this way. Can you tell whose voice is Jesus? Because again, it's really easy when everything's quiet and everything's going simple and you don't have to make a huge decision. But then when you have to make a huge decision, or your family is in crisis, or your finances are such a mess, all of a sudden there's so many voices. And it doesn't matter at that point because you can't tell the difference. It only matters if you've spent the time to know Jesus up to that point. Then you can recognize his voice, because in the midst of all those voices, you hear Jesus saying, this is best for you. This is best for you. Or the temptation is coming at you again, that addiction that has held you captive, and all the voices are saying, continue on this path, this way, this way. And then you hear this small voice that you recognize as the same voice you hear every day when you sit before God, and God says, I don't want this for your life anymore. There's a better way. I'm going to help you. But that's the good shepherd, and it only comes through you spending time with him. You can feel the pull of all these voices, but there's only one true voice that matters. And unless you spend time with him, you can't tell which one it is. You see, Jesus is always working to bring you closer. That's what he's doing. And the enemy's always trying to pull you away. And closeness in any relationship costs time. And the enemy knows that. That's why it's so hard for you to pray. That's why it's so hard. Like everything else in your day comes up and keeps you from spending, even if I'm going to spend just 10 minutes every day, and you're finally like, I can't find 10 minutes. Because the enemy knows. That if you spent time with Jesus, you would draw closer to him and you'd hear his voice more and your life would start to go towards God, not away. So the enemy does everything he can to keep you busy and to keep you focused on everything else. And they're sometimes good things. But you cut out that time and then you can't recognize the voice of Jesus. What stands out to me about what Jesus says here is he says, I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep and my sheep know me. You know, it doesn't surprise me that people know Jesus. Many of us, like I said at the beginning, I said, hey, do you know who Jesus is? They're like, oh, yeah. Isn't he the guy that died on the cross? Or you say, man, he's the Son of God. You could get that right on the test. But what is interesting here is there's also a knowing where Jesus knows you. Matthew 7, Jesus says, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. So he says there's going to be lots of people who say, I know Jesus. He's the Lord. That's the Lord of heaven and earth. I know all the songs. I know his titles. That's what he's saying, right? There's going to be people who say, Lord, Jesus is Lord. Jesus is Lord of my life. Jesus is Lord. Many will say to me on a day, Lord, Lord, again, right? How many of you go around calling people Lord? You're saying there's going to be people who say, Jesus is Lord. Everybody. Jesus is Lord. So many of us will say that. And then they'll say, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? How many of you been prophesying this week? That means you're like speaking God's words over people. So yeah, that's what I mean, not all of us. And you're like, oh man, that guy must be pretty spiritual. Okay, they're speaking God's words. And in your name, we drove out demons. How many have been driving out demons this week? Maybe some of you were like praying over people even, but man, that must be a really spiritual person, right? They must be really walking with God. These are Lord, they're prophesying, they're driving out demons. And in their name, we perform so many miracles, I can't even name them all, right? There's just so many miracles. I don't know about you, that doesn't describe my life, unfortunately. Then I will tell them plainly, what does Jesus say?
I never knew you.
I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers. You see, Jesus says, the sheep, I know my sheep, and they know me. Right? There's this relationship. And I'm afraid so many of us know how to put on the religious face. We know how to come in and look the part, you know. God bless you. Let me pray for you. Sister, brother, so good to be in the house of the Lord. I don't know if that's how you talk. You know how to look good, right? You know how to come in here and like you leave all that mess in your car so when you go back or at your house, you know, and whatever you were yelling and cussing out and screaming and looking at and putting in your body and everything you were doing this week, you know how to keep that out there and then come in here. You know how to look the part. You know how to say, Lord, Lord. You know how to prophesy. Like, let's pray that this demon is cast out. He's saying there's going to be so many religious people that say they know Jesus, but Jesus doesn't know them. I think that's terrifying. And again, what does it mean to be in a relationship with Jesus? It is not just, let me put on the face and make sure everybody else thinks I'm religious. Because I feel like we fall into that. We're afraid to show what's really going on in our lives, right? We can go years without even sharing the real stuff, the junk. Because we're afraid we'll judged or get kicked out or not be able to be a part of this family the same way. So we do it to each other. We all put on this face. And Jesus is saying, I don't want any of that. I want it to be real. I want you to be actually a family. I want to actually know you. I want to know you so well that you know my voice and I know you. And we're in this relationship that is daily. Some of us, we think, just showing up once in a while. Hey, let me just talk with God once a year, maybe once a month. Hey, that's better than nothing. Maybe after once a month, you start to recognize his voice a little bit. But imagine you had a relationship, you were married to someone, and you only saw them once a month. Some of us had to live that, right? Like super separated. You're like separated for a while. Someone's traveling, whatever. It's It's very hard to be close with that person, right? Very hard to know them. Jesus, and the problem is Jesus isn't traveling. He's waiting right at our door every day. He's saying, man, I want to spend time with you. I want to spend time with you. Would you stand with me? Jesus is the good shepherd who wants to know you and wants you to know him. He closes with this last thing. He says, I have other sheep that are not of this sheep pen. I must bring them also. They too will listen to my voice, and there shall be one flock and one shepherd. I love this because Jesus is talking about how he is caring so much about those who are not in the relationship with God. He's like chasing after him. He's searching for you when you're lost. How many of you know he also searches for you when you used to be a part of this, but you've wandered away? Anybody ever felt God chasing after you? Jesus tells a story about how, suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep till he finds it? That's the heart of Jesus. That's the good shepherd, right? And when he finds you, because that's you and me, when he finds you, because we've wandered away, he joyfully puts you on his shoulders and goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says, rejoice with me, I found my lost sheep. I'll tell you, in the same way, there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent. The Good Shepherd cares about saving the lost. I want you to just take a moment. I want to put these two questions up here. I want you to just reflect, you and God. Does he know you? I'm not talking about you prayed a prayer, or maybe even you've been baptized. Those are powerful things. But does he know you in a real relationship, an ongoing relationship? And second, do you know his voice? Have you spent time with him? Is he calling you to spend time with him so you can recognize the voice of Jesus? Why don't you just reflect with God, not your own, just asking God, God, do I know your voice? Jesus, do you know me? Truly know me? I want you to be honest with him, and then if you want to pray over whatever God is revealing to you, I'm going to be up here. I'll invite you to come forward, and I would love to pray over you, whatever God is speaking to you in answer to this.